Hello and welcome to Walking the Earth podcast. Hey, quick thank you to everybody who has given us a rating and review on iTunes. Really appreciate all the 5-star reviews that have been coming in. I'll go ahead and just read one of the most recent ones from Akeem. Akeem says, this is a great podcast which deals with the backpacker's life and various encounters. Highly recommend. Thanks, Akeem, for the great words, and thank you everyone else who has given us a rating or review. If you haven't had a chance yet, please do. If you're enjoying the show, head to iTunes. We have a link on the post for this episode at wtepodcast.com. If you could shoot us a rating or review, that helps us tremendously to reach more people. So thank you, everybody. Another thing that we really appreciate is folks who helping yourselves as well. Folks have gone to our link at audibletrial.com/WTE podcast for your free audiobook download. Just for being a listener of the show, you've got that great offer to take advantage of. Audiobooks, kind of like a podcast. It's a nice thing to listen to just if you're traveling, which we've talked about a couple previous episodes. You can listen to books, maybe new ones you've heard before or ones you've heard before. It's a really nice medium, so you can get yourself a free audiobook just for being a listener here. That's available at audibletrial.com/WTE podcast. You'll help yourself, and also it'll go ways towards supporting the show. And thank you everybody who has already given us a rating and gone to our Audible link. Getting into this episode, though, I'm Mike Margulies, and today I'm still here in wonderful Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I'm being joined by Pete Hillman. Pete, how are you going, man?
Pretty good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so we actually met at, you threw a free little sort of course thing, a free one-day talk about starting online businesses.
Yeah.
And you call yourself a web creative.
Yeah.
Doing consulting and helping people build their sites and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we're fortunate at the moment to have a bit of a West Coast vibe to Chiang Mai in Thailand. There's a lot of people coming out here, entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And people who want to get something going online. And not all of them are IT savvy, so I wanted to give an easy lecture on how to get started online.
Yeah, and I found that to be really helpful because I've got a website here, what I mentioned, wtepodcast.com, and I can learn a lot from you. I did learn, and I still stand to learn more. I think.
Yeah, I think that it's not that difficult now. I mean, I'm offering day courses, but I'm also saying that you can do it if you put the time and the hours in. With this idea of Web 2, where you can upload content simply, it's all there now. In the last 20 years, it's been revolutionized.
Yes.
You don't need to spend a lot of money, just put a bit of time in.
And it's a great thing. We talk a lot about digital nomads and everything, and this idea of being location independent and working online is obviously one of the easiest ways you can become location independent. You yourself have been a nomad even before you were a digital nomad. You were a nomad for how many years have you been?
Well, I had a birthday 2 weeks ago, and I celebrated 31 years on the road.
Oh wow!
So
how old are you, man?
Yeah, I know. I'm 46 now.
No way.
I know.
I honestly, I
would.
would.
The grays gives it away. No, I in the old days we didn't have anything. We had something when we were communicating. You'd make collect calls at over $1.50 a minute, and we had something called post restant. It's still there. Basically, people would send you mail. And you would arrive in somewhere like Singapore or Kathmandu, and there would be a room full of letters, and you'd spend 4 hours looking through all of them.
Before you had Skype and email.
Before all that, yeah. And it was amazing. If you found a letter that someone, a loved one had written you, and you were in the back end of, Calcutta, it was like Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great time. It was much more freer and less tabbed than now.
Right.
But it was much more difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Right now with the internet, right? Yeah. It has become, I'm sure, I can't speak from personal experience. I haven't traveled for 30 years. I haven't even been alive 30 years, much less traveled 30 years. But nowadays it's just so easy because we've got the internet, right? Yeah. Communication opens up. Yeah. Skype, not just Skype and email, but the ability to make money from a little machine you carry in your bag.
I think that what people need to realize is that you need a fifth to a tenth of what you need in the West.
Yes, that's true.
And that when you come out here, it's much safer than it's portrayed to be in the media.
That is so true, man.
And the people are much friendlier, and there's a world outside. Pacific Atlantic coast and the flyover states. America's an amazing place, but you need to get out to put it all in perspective.
Yeah.
And it's not expensive or difficult to do that if you challenge yourself.
Yeah, and I think what you hit on there about the safety of it is, I think a lot of my family back home, for example, in Thailand, right? We're in this period of this whole year of 2014. There's been protests and military coup, and so my family's reading these media reports about, oh my God, it's so dangerous. Why are you in Thailand? I've spent the bulk of this year in this country. The fact of the matter is, though, I feel a lot safer walking around Chiang Mai at night than I do feel walking around Baltimore City at night.
Sure. I mean, as a country, you can't compete with it. I mean, it's a very... It doesn't have an imperial legacy, which is pretty unique in the world.
Yeah, almost every other country here, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Vietnam, all have been colonized.
That's right. So it's different here. There are only about 3 or 4 countries in the world that have not had some European imperial legacy.
Right.
And this is one of them, and you can see that around here. And there are standards of things like safety and theft almost zero.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of time I've left my keys in my motorbike and just woke, and the bike's there. So, in Britain, where I grew up, you couldn't leave anything in the car.
I wouldn't. If I'm in Baltimore, I'm not going to leave. No way.
No. But here, there are certain things. I mean, the roads are a bit crazy for scooter riding, but
that's true.
It's very safe.
There are different dangers.
There's very little
it's
physical.
Exactly, people, say assaulting other people or mugging people, these kind of things. You don't really
almost unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, and it's in contrast, actually, specifically here is much in contrast to, say, Saigon in Vietnam, where it's Saigon is much different vibe to it. You have what they call the Saigon Cowboys, which is kind of like, if you picture that scene. Have you seen Full Metal Jacket?
Yeah.
There's that scene where they're taking pictures with this girl, and this guy runs up, grabs their camera, and he runs on a motorbike. He does a little dance and runs on a motorbike. That is the classic Saigon Cowboy. Everywhere you go, people just pickpocket you. All my friends were telling me stories of close encounters and stuff.
I mean, if you compare it to Africa, I've hitchhiked from north to south, and the danger there is phenomenal. 2 wars started while I was going through it. It's a very dangerous place, and things can kick off very quickly there. If you're taking a picture or whatever, you don't show your camera for more than a second. Whereas here or in India, you can spend hours setting up. People want to know what you're doing, and the Thais are a bit more stoical. But in India, you can't get any continuity or anything because they want to come up and be movie stars.
Right.
And they love you. Even the Brits, after what we did in India, they still love us. So it's an incredible place. Yeah. But Thailand, people will leave you alone unless you want to interact.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I can see some Thai words on there.
Oh yeah.
You're learning a bit.
I am actually. That's what you I wrote down in my notebook here. Yeah. I was doing just before I met up with you. I went to see a Thai language tutor. Actually, it's kind of crazy. This guy, really nice guy. He just posted on one of these. There's all these Facebook pages for resources of Thailand, and he said, "Hey, I'm a Thai guy. I lived in the U.S. for all these years, and I'm retired now. I'm living back in Chiang Mai, and I want to give free tutoring." Wow. And I just jumped on that because I've been looking to to learn more Thai myself.
Yeah, you know how difficult it is. It's like Martian. It's unbelievably
It's
difficult.
very, very, very different. You have to learn how to. It's a completely different way of you have to hear differently. It's the tones thing.
It's the tone.
They
don't listen to the context of the words. They want to hear the tone.
Yes.
Which is bizarre.
It's very bizarre because when we're speaking in English, we use our tones to express the emotion. If I say to you, "What?" That's
exactly.
But in Thai, the tone itself is the word.
It is,
and so it gets confusing as a farang, as a foreigner, But like you said, it's unlike say a place like India, where when I was in India, constantly I was meeting local people because they just were so interested in meeting me.
Right, yeah.
It's more of a
step back.
Yeah, that's more of a step back here, and so I want to make an effort to meet more Thai friends.
You have to go, but they respect it. I mean,
exactly. Once you make that effort, you see that people just light up. I speak Nit Noi, a little bit Thai, but just saying the few things, it makes a huge difference. and so that's kind of like right now. I since I couldn't really, I was planning to enroll in some classes basically, and like it just getting the class I found that was like the 1 month class before I go back to the States was like it kept getting pushed back. So luckily this guy kind of popped up and I jumped on the opportunity. So I'll do this for now, and then presumably I'm probably going to come back in January and take like a full proper course,
Good stuff.
But get a good base for now.
I think you're anomalous because a lot of Americans come here and they keep their own little bubble, and you can't. You've got to get involved and
Many
do
people
the local thing, and break it, because it's such a beautiful country, and people get lulled by the bars and the spas and all that, but there's much more to it.
It is. It's very easy to get by with only English, even though it is very easy. If you just speak English, you'll get by in Chiang Mai.
But you won't integrate.
Exactly, you're not going to integrate at all. And so you can do it. There are a lot of people who come out and do the digital nomad thing. They come out to co-working spaces and will start their business, and you can do it. And I'm not going to say there's something wrong with that, but for me personally, I think a big part of if I want to make Chiang Mai kind of like a long-term base for myself, like make a home here, I think it's really important for me to like integrate as much as I can.
I think so. I think I call it immersion. And in India, I spent a lot of years out in the villages, out in the mountains. I spent a lot of years in the Himalayas, in the
that's
valleys
awesome,
there.
I need to go back to the Himalayas. I missed that part of India.
It's my second home. I absolutely love it. It's hard. It's hard travel, as you know.
Yeah.
And you're going to get perhaps a bit more sicker, but it's so rewarding because of the culture, religion, everything, and they come up to you and they want to integrate. But immersion is the way to do it, And even now, I take people out in the villages here, and they can't believe how different it is from the city.
Oh yeah. It's kind of interesting, right? Because you're in this. You're in Thailand, but it's like, am I in Thailand? Because I look around, there's all these signs in English everywhere. It's an interesting place.
It is. It's a fusion. It's a weird fusion
of East meets West kind of.
Yeah, it's so developed in some ways, and it's so not backward, but in other ways, it's just incredibly Asian.
Yes, exactly. You see the Western influence, but also it's like you see like the stark contrast at the same time. It's like that's like one thing I really love about it though, is it has that like that mesh of like the East meets West. I'm here in a Buddhist country, and you can see the culture, like the way people treat each other and address it. It's very, very different than like in the States.
And it takes a while to get your head around it. It works in a different way. I think you need to check your expectations when you come here, and then be open.
I think that's another thing that, for example, like many of my friends and family, I keep pushing them. Hey guys, come visit me. Trust me, it's awesome. I think there's the picture that people have of what it's like in Thailand is different than in actuality, and it has to be, because I know for me it is. I didn't know what it was till I came here.
They project it in one way, what you have, and then when the reality is something totally different. And you develop and you change the longer you spend in that country. Like in India, 5 years, I don't feel like I touched the surface really. I spent a lot of time in where I wanted to be. Hidden away in valleys and up with villages and things, but it's infinite,
That's a thing.
And you never stop learning tiny little things, all the time, and you realize, I've been, misunderstanding that for 5-10 years, and what a fool, but it's all about learning.
Yeah, and you have the telltale sign of a seasoned traveler. It's that humility.
I think that's what you need, isn't it?
Yeah.
You realize the more that you know, the less you actually know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
funny because
I
think a lot of times when you first get to a country, it's you know everything, right? You know everything, and the longer you spend in a country, like you realize how little you actually know.
Yeah. I think I'm lucky. One of the things I've always done is come into a country. Like first time I went to Manhattan, I stayed down in Broadway and I walked up to Yonkers. I've always done that wherever I was, in Berlin, in Cairo, or wherever, Toronto, whatever. I would drop my stuff off and just walk and smell the city. Like Manhattan, walking all the way up through the rich areas, then up to the poorer areas, and up to Yonkers and that, and then catching a bus back and things, and watching people. And smelling the cities. It sounds weird. Every city seems to have its own smell and feel. Yeah, it's the way to do it, and you just watch people and be humble enough to learn,
Yeah.
rather than project a bubble and show your insecurity by screaming
Right.
and carrying on and
Right.
expecting things.
Yeah, there's a tendency when you come out to say country that's so different. Like things aren't what you expect them to be. Like why is that? Like let me think of an example. Okay, so if I'm at a restaurant here, um, it's not what I'm used to at first. When the waiter, for example, in the U.S. is going to walk up, be like very,
Sure.
"Hi, how can I help you?"
Yeah.
and like be very like the customer service in like the U.S. for example. It's like this thing.
Untouchable.
But you can't come here. Yeah, you can't come to Thailand and expect like, oh, I'm going to sit down and like this waiter's going to be at my will and beckon. Like, no, it's just a different culture. And so if you come into a place like Thailand and you think like, hey, what the hell? I have been here and the waiter hasn't brought my menu yet. What's going on? Like, whoa, check yourself for a second, because it's not like it's not it's not them that are wrong. It's you're in a different culture.
It's you've named it. You've got to check yourself, and it's all about development with humility and spending time. I mean, I remember being a kid. I spent time in Munich, and they would come and throw a pizza on the table. Literally, it'd be spinning, and you'd say, "Oh, what about the salad?" And nothing. They just run off. I mean, they're really, and it seems very rude, but Munich's famous for that kind of brashness in Germany. Whereas in the States, it's probably the best public service I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that's not just because of the tipping. It just is. It's indoctrinated in the system.
Yeah, it's not just places you tip. You go to like a store. If I walk into like I don't know.
Customer service is amazing.
Yeah, any store's like, "Hey, can I help you? Is there anything you need?"
Yeah.
It's just part of, which is it's something I could come to appreciate now.
That's right.
About
But you had
American
to leave
culture.
to
exactly, to realize like that's
it.
kind of odd that what America has is like, you walk into a store and a restaurant anywhere you go, someone's gonna be like there to like, there's like a bee attacking
Giant
me.
bee.
But giant bees are flying at us right now. I'm just gonna like.
I think it's after your nipple.
Play cool. But yeah, the customer service. Oh man, the customer service is really awesome in the States.
It is. I mean, I used to think it was the tipping culture. We don't tip in England unless you're wealthy or something amazing's happened, but because we pay a higher minimum rate, on the minimum wage and things. But it's not so, 'cause it's almost everywhere you go and everything you do. But then you
maybe
come
it's like
out,
a chicken egg thing, like which came
Maybe.
from maybe the tipping culture came from this customer. It's sort of like I don't know.
But I trust in humanity, and when you get out of the big cities in the United States, and I've hitchhiked, and the people are the friendliest Western English speaking ever. People inviting you to their house and all sorts of things. They don't even know me, and they hear the accent. But yeah, they're incredible. It's the main cities are hard, and that's what puts people off. When you land in Delhi, it's one big megalopolis of madness. It's the same. Bangkok is softer and easier going. Same thing, and you need to get out.
It's kind of like that's almost like a weird, it seems counterintuitive, but almost universally in different countries where you go, in a really counterintuitive way, the more people there are, the less people you connect with in a weird way, right?
Yeah, it's just strange. Everybody's atomized in the big city.
Yeah, if you're in a big city, you have to
I mean, London, if you've ever been to London, the tube is awful. I was reading recently about people who were on the subway in Manhattan when 9/11 struck. And they said the weird thing was everybody was talking to each other, which I thought was really sad. The fact that it took an absolute catastrophe to get people to open up and be
humans to each other.
Yeah. Whereas when you travel, yourself, you're always meeting new people, unless you don't want to.
Right.
Specifically in places like India,
you can't
Asia,
help it.
and places like that. You meet real freak oddballs, and you meet really interesting people with massive life experiences.
Yeah.
I've met so many incredible people over the years.
That is for sure, I think one of the best parts about this travel lifestyle is all of the amazing people that you run into and you experience and that make you grow. And it's on two sides of it. It's like other travelers that you find to be like-minded, and you're like, oh, there's someone who thinks like people like I couldn't find someone who thinks this way back home who's this similar to me. And then also you're in this very different culture, and the local people you meet like really open your mind to like the things about your culture that you didn't realize, and about yourself that you didn't realize.
I think the other thing is we need Americans to travel
Yeah.
because the power involved from the United States.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
such a
Big influence in the
only
world.
5% of the world's population, but they use 25 to 30% of its resources.
Is that, yeah.
If they come out here, they can make fundamental changes
To the
and
world.
observe how everything works.
Yes.
I've got friends over there, and they're scared senseless. I remember I was
people
I
are
was
petrified.
in debt. Yeah, I know.
They
For
don't-
no
I don't know
reason.
why, but-
the media, the popular media, and all that. But
It's kind of, it's wild because as an American, it's just a weird thing to me is because if you have an American passport, you are at such an advantage on a world scale as far as the opportunities you have, what you can basically where your passport lets you go, how far your dollar goes. You have this immense amount of opportunity that most people in the world are not as like a Thai person, for example, does not have these opportunities that an American has. Yet the Americans oftentimes are ones who don't want to and are worried about it and are freaking out. It's like, wait, you're the best positioned person in the world. People say things like, "Oh, I wish I could travel. I wish you're the best leveraged person one of the best in the world to be able to do this."
It's an absolute privilege, and that's what a lot of
Yeah.
people think about. They forget actually
Yeah.
when you're out here, the opportunities you
There's a lot
get.
of fear.
Yeah, there's there from the media. I can go on about that forever,
Right.
but basically you've got to break through it and get out, and then
Yeah.
you
I
know,
think we're seeing it too. I think more Americans are starting to travel.
I hope so. I think this younger generation's coming through, and
I'm starting to see it. I'd like to say more now than I saw a year ago. I mean, I look at the guests on my podcast are recently overwhelmingly American. I was surprised myself. I was like, wait a minute. I've been talking to a lot of Americans on this show. What's going on here? This is weird.
Yeah, Thailand seems to be a real mecca for Americans in many ways, whereas India, you only see them in the sort of guru areas like Pune and Rishikesh and things like that. If you go out in the dark sort of areas where it's really, really poor, you meet Canadians and Aussies and Brits and but Americans. Having said that, they're usually doing some good NGO work. Like I met an American guy who was working on the borders of Afghanistan when that was going off, and he was risking his life to give out stuff. So there's a lot of good work being done.
Yeah.
But we need more people to come out.
You're right. Well, it's kind of like you said, the U.S. And I'm realizing this now more than I did when I was in the U.S. But I realize now just how much of an impact my country has on the rest of the world. It's just massive, and in just ways I never would have conceived of before.
Well, the military budget in itself.
There's a military, also just TV shows, movie,
everything,
the whole culture, like McDonald's and the
Mm.
Starbucks and the military presence, of course, obviously is a very, very big impact as well. We have a massive impact on this world,
and the thing is that ultimately the people who live in America, who are subject to popular media, don't realize it, and they don't come out here to get a balanced view of it.
Yeah, it's true.
They need to come out and just have.
Well, I think about my own family, man, and I come from my background. I come from a very conservative family, and when we have holiday dinners, for example, it's sort of like. The kind of like the Fox News rhetoric comes out, and it's sort of like, for me, it's very difficult because, it's the rhetoric in support of, hey, invading Iraq and all these things, and I'm thinking to myself, like, no, we haven't been bombing Iraq for 20 years for humanitarian reasons.
No.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance to talk about that another time, but the thing is that the amount of power involved, people have a direct correlation.
Yes.
They can say a lot.
I'm not. The thing is, like, I don't. I think everyone means well. It's just not having the understanding. Like, I think of a lot of people that are in support of these things that are not necessarily the healthiest for the rest of the world. Let's say that, like you said, the traveling and the experiencing and seeing people. I think.
Well, you unwind slowly, and if you can be humble enough and gain security as who you are as a person over time. I mean, I remember the first time I was 15, I got off in Istanbul, absolutely terrified, shitting myself. I went down to see the Blue Mosque, and for about a week I didn't know what was going on. This was 1983. And then I realized, I hitchhiked down the west coast of Turkey prior to its development, and it was still like India, pretty much third world. Then I went down to Cairo and went down the Nile, and it totally blew me away. You know, I mean, I'd been brought up that Winston Churchill was a great guy, and the British Empire was very benign and helpful and all that. And there I was meeting it, and it took me about a decade of undoing what I'd learned,
undoing the programming,
about this nonsense and bullshit about how brutal the British Empire was, and it was utter crap.
Well, you know, for me, I had this experience when I was in Vietnam. I'm looking around at Vietnam, and I was like, you know, here's this communist country. We had a whole war in Vietnam about communism, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of businesses here, and there's a lot of there's classes, and this feels a lot like capitalism to me. And then I thought some more. I'm thinking about the U.S. Like, wait a minute, do we even really have a free market in the U.S. either? We've got government, and the realization I came to was there's no such thing as communism or capitalism. There's degrees of government involvement in countries, and it kind of blew my mind to think, like, wait a minute, you're telling me this whole war was fought, like, it was essentially what I came to was this is a boogeyman, this communist
Another
boogeyman.
one, yeah.
And then so now looking back on that war today, it's easy to say that, like, oh, we know that. But then you have to take a step back and think, okay, what are the things that we're doing right now that in 40 years from now we're going to look back and say, oh, we were fighting this thing for a boogeyman.
Well, what I want to say, to get back to the travel and getting people out, is go now, because of the speed of change. Things that I saw 31 years ago have totally gone. They've finished, you know, they've either become extinct, like I was diving off the Andaman Islands. A lot of those reefs have been damaged by tsunami and things like that. But in terms of the villages and like access, like when I was in Ladakh, which is a Buddhist state in northern India, now there's a road that goes up there, and before there wasn't. There was zero crime, very little unemployment. Now there's about 10% unemployment. There's drug addiction's gone up and things like that, and it's changed fundamentally the structure. Now that change is going to come wherever, because you get trade-offs, you get good and bad from so-called developed ideas and neo-capitalism. But at the same time, a lot of the old religions and the old things are vanishing very, very quickly, and people need to get out and see them. Not just the wildlife, but accents, dialects, languages, cultures, shrines, all these things. They're all out there. I mean, it's like Lord of the Rings if you are able to let go and see it for what it is and be open to it. You know?
Absolutely. And it's circling back to like what you said initially. The traveling itself, it just opens your eyes and your mind, and you learn about yourself, and then you learn also about the world, and it's
It sounds like a cliche. I mean,
it is so cliche, right?
Yeah, I was a kid and I read Kerouac when I was a kid, and I actually, I hitchhiked a lot in my life.
Which is awesome.
Not so much now, but I still do a little bit. And that's how I began. Your currency was who you were. It was nothing to do. There were no cheap tickets. If you go into Europe now, you can fly across Europe for $25 and things like that. You had to hitch or find some way or get on with a trucker and jump in the back there. And your currency was who you were. If you were an arsehole, he'd drop you off after 5 miles,
Yeah.
But if you could talk to him because he's bored or whatever, and going around England as a kid, the fear wasn't there, because of this lunatic idea that everybody's trying to kill you or steal you, and it's nonsense.
Everyone's not. Actually, most people are nice. Like you were saying before, people welcome you into their homes and all these things.
Incredible.
Like I find that experience. It's funny because around the world where I go, I find that when I'm in need, by and large, someone's there to help me. Like
and it doesn't matter
most people are there to be good and help you.
And it doesn't matter whether you're Australian, New Zealand, or whatever. And it gets to this cliche of a world citizen. Eventually, if you travel enough.
You're like, what's a country?
Yeah, and the hardest thing becomes going back. You're going back soon.
Yes.
I've gone back 50 times, and it's
that'll be a culture shock for me going back.
It's hard.
I think I'll grow in that way too, though, right? Because that's part of the process too, is going back and like trying to figure out, because I probably have right now some assumptions that I'm wrong about, because I've probably lost perspective about home as well. So it's part of the process.
I always say, people just you go up to the Himalayas and vanish for 6 months and think about your navel or whatever, and that's not hard. It really isn't hard. When people come out here, you get in this flow zone where you're traveling. You're in it now where you're bopping around and it becomes. I remember the airports were like bus stops to me. for a long time, about a decade. I was flitting everywhere. You know, my mother used to say, the first question was, "Where are you?" You know, and I'd say, "Well, I'm actually in Sri Lanka." She'd say, "But you were on your way to Mozambique. You know, you're in Cape Town." I'm like, "Well, something came up."
Right.
And that sort of fluid mindset, and then as you get a bit older, and going back is not as easy anymore because you've changed.
Right.
Well, we all change in that, but you get back and you meet your old friends, you eat your best food. 3 or 4 weeks later, it's oh shit, you know.
Right.
I'm missing it or whatever. Or these guys are great, I love them, but it's time to move on.
Right. Right. I think a part of it will be, I will have some difficulty, I think, relating to some people at home. Part of that's on me though, right? Because I need to like just sort of, again, it comes back to the humility thing. Like I'm not, it's not like I came out here and I'm better now. I know all these things about the world. No, I learned some things for myself to grow, but like I can't come back with some arrogant attitude now. You know? So part of it's on me to just kind of, you know.
One of the hardest things is you're very hard on your own country. We all do it.
Yeah,
you go
you're
back
right,
and
man.
you think, geez, this sucks, that's crap, that's, you know, and it's very easy to rip it to bits and, you know, think about this and think about that. And then and you go in cycles, you know, and when you first come out, it's like, well, geez, that's dirty, or that's not good. And then eventually when you're in the flow, you're out, you're having all these limitless experiences, and you're really meeting some cool people who you would never meet back home. And then you go back and you see your friends, and it seems like they're all in the box and all this and that. But I found that, you know, after about 10 years of going back to the UK, I stopped trying to, you know, convert people. Or give them this or that. You can't. It's the old cliche about taking the horse to water and then making it drink.
Yeah,
you really can't.
Yeah.
And you know what? Some people just aren't interested. They want to work at the library, or they want to be a nurse, and they want to raise a family and all this.
And that's absolutely right. I'm not here to like tell people, oh, you have to go and quit your job and travel and stuff. Like, no, it's not for me to say. Every person chooses their own journey.
That's right.
For me, this was the path that I found helpful and it's been good. And I do think it generally is a helpful thing for a person, but absolutely it comes on the individual to like really decide, you know, what they want. And I can tell people, for the people who do want to do it, I can be there to support them and encourage them. Like, if that's what they want, I can give them the information.
That's great. I mean, I've got friends,
but not to like convert people who don't want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not about conversion.
Exactly.
Is it? It's about people trying it, and if it doesn't work, then don't do it. If it does,
absolutely.
I'm a bit of an anomaly because I've been out for a long time.
Really long time.
Life. But I have friends who I grew up with who did it. They've all done a year out. I mean, you might know that in Europe and
much more common. Yeah.
In Britain and in Australia and New Zealand, the year out is a big deal.
Yeah, gap years.
If you haven't got the gap year, when you go for your interview, wherever you're going, they look at you like, "What's wrong with you?"
It's so funny because I was like, the U.S. is like the opposite. People think you're crazy if you say you're going to go traveling for a year.
And America suffers for it. America suffers for it. You know, I mean, the fact that no one can tell you where Iraq is on a map, or Afghanistan, or Vietnam is scary. Yeah. And, you know, these are key events in American history as well. But you know, my friends have settled down with families now and kids and that, but they had a year or two out, and they all became much better people for it.
Yeah.
Some people I know just didn't like it. You know, they came away and they thought, "Wow, it's just not me. I like comfort and I like being home in a routine."
Well, and that's the thing. It's like you can't convert people. It's you know, everyone's now. It's I you know, part of it is too. It's not just that the conversion. It's I think a big part of me just wants people to understand, maybe. Like, I feel like if, say, my parents, my brother, or some close friends of mine, if they come out and just kind of see it in person, even if they decided the lifestyle's not for them, you know, it would be nice to, like, because they would get that a little bit of that perspective, even if it's only for a couple of weeks or something.
I
like,
agree.
You'll kind of, like, then you can I can talk to you in a different way about like what it's like and everything. And again, I still can't force that either. Say, hey, come, you have to come visit me. But I think part of it's just a personal, for me, like a longing I have. You know, it's my own thing, of course. But
no, I agree with you, because even now, after all these years, I've got friends who think I'm down on Koh Samui drinking buckets of vodka with 2 women on each arm.
Right.
You know, and we live in the north where there's a mountain where there's 3 seasons delineated. And it's totally different. Lana, you know, it's 600-year-old culture that was different and cut off from Thailand for a long time. Totally different. But I still have people back home who think, you know, I'm in Samui or Phuket, somewhere crap like that, hanging around with barflies and things like that. The cliche is Thailand's this. It's not, and you get what you want out of it. If you're going to go down to Phuket and
that's
hang around,
exactly
good for you, But if you come up and you want culture and all that, you find it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You find kind of what you're looking for. Like there is, and I've gone through phases myself of all the different cycles. So you can go and party your ass off, all these things. You can be drinking a whole buckets and girls and all these stuff. But at the same time, like, I can say for me, like, so I have had phases of partying, but ultimately you find like that's not the thing that's going to fulfill you as a life. You can't just be partying. And I feel like I'm in an interesting situation now where I was doing a hardcore backpacking for a while, moving, and now that I'm becoming more like domesticated, let's say, settled here in Chiang Mai, since I don't have that stimulation in and of itself of the moving,
right.
It was easy at first coming to Chiang Mai. The trap I kind of maybe fell into was like doing a lot of partying, and I'm like, no. It's actually what I'm doing now is trying to find more activities to stimulate myself. Started taking jiu-jitsu classes. Started trying to learn some Thai. Starting to ramp up the podcast and do more things. And
it seems there's a natural progression.
Yes, it is.
There's nothing wrong with. I'd say for 10 years I had a backpack, constantly moving, through a lot of countries. And loving it and being in this sort of flow of a non-judgmental sort of continuity of always being on a train, a plane, or in the back, or hitching, or walking, or whatever, And there's nothing wrong with that, but then your needs change as you,
exactly.
I still love it now. Every week I go up to the temples here, the hidden temples on the mountain and things like that, and I take people out. But I don't find the need anymore to go through. I still want, South America's the big spot that I'm missing in my life. I need 3 or 4 years to spend down there at least. But it's not a cheap place to be, and it's I learn Spanish and things. But yeah, I'm so happy. I've got friends who can't sit still. Yeah. And they're always flying off. They're jetting off somewhere like KL or somewhere in Australia.
And again, it comes back to like the individual person chooses their journey, right? Yeah.
There are a lot of well-off foreigners here who can't sit still, and their money goes a long way, so they use that, it's a bit hedonistic. But there's also a lot of people who love it here, who just want to be here, not just to start up their startup, but they want to spend time and get to know Thai culture.
Yes. And you have all these different things, and it's funny because and for me it's a combination of these things, I'd say. Because I'm here wanting to learn about Thai culture, experience something, get deeper into it, like much more than I've been able to get by learning the language. Essentially, I can get deeper in the culture, and also the startup thing is something I'm interested in as well. Doing online business. I think you seem similar as well. Like you learn the languages and you're also doing your online things, and so it's like this combination. In an interesting way, it's like so I quit my job to go on this little mini retirement, only to learn that the goal isn't retirement actually, because now I'm wanting to work, wanting to keep doing things just out of myself, because hey, I'm here, what do I want to do with my time, and I want to learn some things, I want to build some things, and it's coming now. It's nice because it's coming from somewhere from within me versus feeling like I'm doing something that I have to do. I'm like,
I think that the big thing is that Chiang Mai and Thailand sold as this startup digital nomad thing. I've never liked the title digital nomad, but it defines what they are very well, and I suppose you could say I'm one of them. But there's much more to it. You can't just breeze over and expect a 4-hour work week, and things like that. And that's being sold, and it's not true. You have to do some thinking. But then when you do come here and you have a go, that's an English saying, have a go, and be open, you can live a very high quality of life.
Next time on Walking the Earth podcast, Mike continues his conversation with Pete Hillman, and they talk about his website, Travel Outside Yourself. They also talk about social mobility, debt slavery, and an interesting concept, how countries should not be rated on GDP, but gross national happiness. Now there's a thought. Support the show by going to audibletrial.com/WTE podcast to get your free audiobook. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes and be on the lookout for the next part of the Pete Hillman episode, which will be posted at WTEpodcast.com.